Welcome to The Teach, where we go through what you need to know to bring kids on brooms to the table. In Kids on Brooms, we are magical folk living in a magical world. You win? Well, can you really win life? Of course you can. You just need to beat your DM down until they don't give a damn about what you're doing. But that's not how best to play. You want to create the world together. So why do we really want and enjoy to play games like Kids on Brooms? Well, to me, I love Kids on Brooms because it's actually a very simple but powerful RPG system that will help you and your friends embrace your creativity. But I love this system for the care it puts into its players and its GM. The first 10 pages really go through how to make sure you all have the best game together, all creating the world in which you are going to inhabit in your imagination. Playing a game of Kids on Brooms is just like most other RPG systems. You will be creating and evolving your characters through various different trials and tribulations. Just like any normal RPG system, you'll describe what you want to do, but in Kids on Broom, it plays out slightly differently, in which you, as a player, will also describe what happens if you are over-successful or under-successful. And the game actually brings through different elements that allow you and the GM to really control the game together as a narrative purpose. When we create our characters, you'll be using the 6 core dice, your D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20 to populate your key stats. You have fight and flight, you have brains and brawn, you have charm and grit. And all of these stats will actually be used throughout the game, and by assigning 1 dice to each of these stats, you'll be good at one and terrible at another. And this creates a lot of great storytelling opportunities. If you're terrible with charming people, then your character is always going to have a fun time having fun conversations, but you're probably going to look like a moron. Your GM will describe the situation, and you will actually describe how you want to respond. You could use your charm to try and talk yourself out of a sticky situation. You could use your flight to try and run away from your troubles and worries, or you could use fight to just punch them right in the face. Whatever you choose, your GM will then set a difficulty level and you will roll the dice associated with that stat. If you succeed your roll by meeting or exceeding your difficulty check, you will have succeeded. But if you go too far above that, you'll actually have different consequences. You might just want to bop them on the nose to tell them off and just, let them know you're there. But if you succeed by 5 or 10 greater, you've turned out to knock them out or even give them a concussion. Adversely, you could also fail. Anytime you do not make your check, you'll actually get an adversity token. And these adversity tokens can be used later as modifiers in further checks. 1 adversity token, adding 1 to any future roll when used. But be warned, if you fail by 5 or more, you're also going to have adverse consequences. Try and punch them in the face and you fail by more than 5 and you adversely end up punching your own friend instead. This is a game about casting spells. So as you're going through, different spells will be using different stats to make your spell check. Now, it's not a game where all the spells are prescriptive. We don't know all the spells because you're going to use your imagination to create them. If it is a creation spell, you might be using your imagination. So you might make a brains check on seeing how well you can craft that mindset. Anytime you cast a spell, the DM will, just like a normal check, set a difficulty level, but you get to roll your normal dice as well as an additional D4 for casting the spell. Just like any RPG system, you're going to be using conflict, in which case your roll is going to go up against another person's. In this instance, the GM won't set a DC, but they will decide on what skill each player or NPC will use. Both players or GM will roll the dice to determine the outcome, with the higher result succeeding. Just like any other rolls, if there's 5 or more difference, extra consequences or repercussions will occur. Now, it wouldn't be magic if we couldn't store or keep that magical potential for later. So creating potions and imbuing magical items is core to the game. You will have brooms, you will have magic rings, and if you are so special, you might even have an invisibility cloak. But as I mentioned, this system is really about taking care of the players. They've made specific reference in this book to make sure that you're not using this system to play out some dark fantasies within your brains. And that's why the Council for Ethical Use of Magic, or KYUM, exists. So we don't want to spoil too much of the game because most of it's actually about creating the game together with your friends. But let's go through some very basic setups so that you know how to get this game to the table as quickly as possible. First, we're going to set up our boundaries. Within the game, we want to set up our boundaries to define the playstyle that we want to have. On page 3, setting up boundaries is very clearly articulated. Go through and really kind of get through each of the players. Do you want more of a mystery, an adventure, or do you just want to be having magical duels? From there, we're going to create the world, and this is best done in a collaborative fashion. The GM will set out the play of the world and how it kind of fits all together, but then the players, as students, are going to name the school. They're going to determine where it's located and go through several other steps to create the world that they wish to inhabit. From there, we're actually going to go into further world building. We're going to determine what the systems of power are, and this could be very important as some players might recognize things like muggles and non-magical folk, but they don't want that to be really inhibiting their game. So talk through as a group and determine not only what the systems of power are, but how they play out in the world. From here, we get to the most exciting part, character creation. On page 11, this is really going to go through that different steps to creating a character. If it's your first time playing through, I recommend sticking with the selection of tropes, but you can actually create all your characters from scratch. At the back of the book in the appendices, where we can select from 19 different predefined tropes, and these will actually help us quickly and easily get the game to the table. Once all players have selected their trope, it's quite useful to go through quickly what the stats mean and how they're going to be used in the game. Going through the brains, brawn, fight, flight, charm and grit is quite as easy as one player reading out what they mean and then having a quick discussion on what they look like in game. From there, you will also be able to go through what the different types of magic go through. Fight, brains, brawn, charm, grit, etc. will actually all be articulated on page 21. You will also select what wands and brooms you will actually obtain when you're starting. You've been a wizard for a few years now, so you will know how to use these items. You'll also have a familiar. This is an animal that you can communicate with telepathically and will always be around, annoyingly so sometimes. From here, we're actually going to introduce each player to each other. In the world we inhabit, we all know each other and we're all friends. So this is a section where we're actually going to be asking and prompting each player with stories about ourselves and each other. This creates bonds within this world. As PCs, we haven't inhabited these characters before, but these characters all know and love or hate each other, and we need to know why this is. There are 3 models for selection: the quick start, the one-sided questions, and the complete. For our campaigns, we're going to be doing the complete because we want to have more in-depth and engaging conversations with each of the players. And as GM, I want to be lazy, and I just want my players to talk for me. Finally, we're going to go through our finishing touches. Make sure you got your full name, motivation, fears, your school bag, any trope-specific questions, and if you have the time or inclination, go through your class schedule. There's some good examples here, but that's a great way of starting off a campaign, getting to know your fellow players, and just start living in that character's world. From there, your GM will actually introduce the world and get your play going. And that is how you get Kids on Brooms to the table. Thank you for joining us in this video. We've got a lot of other videos out there, and we also have our sister channel, Board Game Bar, where we make drinks and cocktails to pair with board games on our table. Thanks for joining us in the video. Hit us up on the social medias, And we'll see you in the next video. Bye. Fuck, I just realised I'm going to be a GM playing a game where my players are all students. And they're all fucking teachers.
We're all teachers. What are you making teachers?
Oh God, what have I done? What have I done?
I'm calling out. I'm not calling out. But they do it, so can I. It's my turn to call out.